Hi guys, Drew back again with Princess Craft RV, and today we are going to walk through the accessories and appliance on the 2021 Northstar 850 SC. First things first is going to be your water heater here. Now this is a 6-gallon capacity water heater and it runs off of propane gas with 12-volt direct spark ignition. It is as easy as a flip of a switch. It has there's no pilot light to light or anything like that. So maintenance on this thing becomes pretty important. So manufacturer has some very specific recommendations on how to maintain this properly and how to drain it and things like that. So number one, anytime the unit's going to be in storage for more than 7 days, we want to go ahead and depressurize it and drain it. To do that, we are going to make sure that we do not have an overall inflow of water to the unit itself. So make sure that if we're pulling off of our freshwater holding tank, that our water pump is off. If we're hooked up to city water, make sure that we have the actual valve off so there's no new water that's going to fill this tank as we're trying to drain it. So once we've done that, we're going to go to the hot side of any fixture, whether that's going to be on the outside or the inside. What we're going to do is open up the hot side of that fixture, and you're going to see the excess pressure within the hot water holding tank be dissipated. So once we've done that, we're clear to drain it. What we're going to do is we are going to come back out here to the exterior of the unit. We're going to use an 1 1/16 socket with an extension and ratchet, and we're going to go ahead and remove our drain plug here. Once we've done so, we're going to see 5.5 gallons of water evacuate from this location. Now this drain plug pulls double duty. It's not only your drain plug, but it is also your anode rod. What that means for you is it is a consumable part. It's going to generally last a year or two. What it does is it acts like a magnet for hard water deposits, calcification, things like that. They deposit onto the anode rod and eat away at that as opposed to the inside of the water heater. So it starts out about 3/4 of an inch by 12 inch. By the time it needs to be changed, it's going to look about the size of a pencil and be very decrepit. So it is very clear when it does need to be changed. Now on the flip side of that conversation, before we return the unit back to service, once we've drained it, we do need to prime or pump 6 gallons of water into the water heater before we start trying to heat that water. To do so, you're of course going to replace the anode rod if you haven't already. Once you've done that, we're going to introduce an inflow of water to the unit overall. So again, if we're drawing off the freshwater tank, we're going to turn on that 12-volt water pump. If we are using the city water connection, we're going to physically turn on that valve. So with water going into the unit as a whole, we're again going to go to that hot side of any fixture and we're going to turn it on. What we're going to see this time is going to be slightly different. You're going to see a lot more water come from that spigot as well as a lot more air. What it's doing is it's displacing the air that has filled the tank and replacing it with water. It takes about 5 minutes or so for that to happen. So that flow at the fixture is going to be very bubbly, very spitty, airy. What we're going to wait for is that flow to normalize, and once it does, that's our indicator that we do have 6 gallons of water within the unit. We can go ahead and start to heat with that propane gas there. Now dropping down here, we have our freshwater connection. So what that means is this is how we're going to introduce water into the holding tank. We're going to take our drinking water hose, we're going to stick it right in there, we're going to fill up till we're satisfied. We're then going to cap it off here. Do keep in mind that this is non-pressurized naturally, so we do need to use that onboard water pump to go ahead and draw that up to the fixtures and make that water usable. Right next to that, we have your 30 amp 110 volt power supply. Now this is your cord, comes with the unit. It is 30 feet in length and it does only plug into the camper one way. So if we go ahead and unscrew that, we take a look there at the prongs or the receptacles at this point. You see you have two slanted, one L-shaped. We're going to line everything up properly. Sometimes easier said than done. We plug it straight in. It's going to naturally sit kind of off center like this. What we do is we give it an 1/8 inch turn to the right, that locks it in. Then we do have this secondary collar here to secure it further, keep that nice and tight, keep that connection from wiggling loose. It's my recommendation for every unit that we deliver to go ahead and upgrade to a 30 amp surge protector. With even these kind of smaller units, there's quite a bit going on electronically, and it's very important that we do protect the incoming power, protect those sensitive electronics from that incoming power. So if you have any questions on what we recommend or how to use it, feel free to give our parts department a call. They would be happy to educate you further on the products that we recommend and how to use them. Moving on here, we have your refrigerator vent. You have a bottom vent, a top vent. From a maintenance standpoint, there's not too terribly much you're going to be doing with this appliance. It's not what we would consider a customer serviceable unit. So what that means for you is, of course, every 90 days or so, we're going to remove both vents. We're going to give it a visual inspection, make sure everything looks good, make sure there's no frayed lines, cracked propane, fittings or anything like that. So just make sure everything looks good. Now, one important thing to know is that you have these vents here, and now these vents are essentially wide open to the atmosphere. So what that means is that mud daubers, flying insects, things like that can actually nest within this orifice, and they will crawl into the burner tubes. Holy crap!
Let me change the recording level. You're talking way too loud.
I'm excited. I'm just happy to be here.
You're good. I just need to change the level.
Another thing to keep in mind, other than doing your visual inspection, is going to be protecting the unit from mud daubers, flying insects, things like that. So they do make screens specifically cut for these vents, and we're going to make sure that we install them before taking the unit out for any serious use to keep those, again, flying insects from kind of gumming up the works here. So with those screens in place, only other thing you're going to be doing is, again, giving it that visual inspection. Now, when it comes to removing these vents for that inspection or reinstalling them, it's very easy. You have some slots up at the top. We're going to insert those first. We're going to line everything up. These holes can be a little difficult to kind of figure out, but once you have everything nice and flush, you know that you are fully inserted. And then from there, we just take these little lock tabs and give them a quarter turn. That's going to go ahead and lock everything on. I always go by and give them a slight tug there to make sure that they are, in fact, locked on. A lot of people have lost these going down the road, so it does pay to go ahead and give that a second look. Here we have a vent, septic vent, not anything you have to worry about. It does just kind of exist there on the frame, or excuse me, on the body. And then we have your outside shower area. Of course, you have access to hot and cold water here, and it's going to utilize a quick connect sprayer hose. You'll make your connection by, of course, sliding that locking collar back, inserting the male end fully. Once you've done so, that's going to spring back, lock on. From there, you'll go ahead to be able to pressurize the system with either one of these valves. Now, it may be easier for you when you're disconnecting this to go ahead and turn the valve off and release the pressure in the line. Here on the underside of the wing, we have your city water connection. We're going to go ahead and use that anytime we do have full-time access to running water, i.e. a RV park or wherever. But water pressure becomes very important when we do talk about city water. Generally from the line, it is overpressurized for what these units are rated for. So we're going to want to make sure we use a water pressure regulator. This is included with your purchase, so you will have this at time of delivery. What we're going to do is we're going to hook this directly onto the water source or spigot. So as close to the water source as you can, go ahead and screw this on. And then, of course, you're going to screw your drinking water hose on there. And then lastly, we're going to make our connection here. And generally, it's easier by rotating this actual trailer-bound connection there. But very important, I can't stress enough, always use a water pressure regulator. These are widely available. Any place with an RV aisle is going to have a water pressure regulator. So if this gets lost or damaged, make sure we are replacing it before taking the unit out. Also here on the underside of the wing, we have our cable satellite inlet. That's a connection there designed for either a park cable service or an aftermarket satellite package. What that will allow you to do is feed, of course, a TV signal from the exterior of the unit to the designated TV area on the inside. So just a pass-through connection, standard RG6 cable fitting that will allow you to provide TV services to the unit. Here we have your propane burning furnace. This is a Dometic product, but they all work basically the same. Propane, again, is going to be your source with 12-volt direct spark ignition. What you see here is going to be the exhaust. So number one, very important thing is, of course, let it exhaust. You're not going to want to block the airflow at all. Although another important thing is going to, again, be protecting this from the intrusion of mud daubers and flying insects, things like that. So again, I'm going to refer you to installing the specifically cut screen for this appliance. That's going to keep those nasty insects from nesting within the appliance. Other than that, not really much maintenance you're going to be doing with this, other than those two very specific things. And then beside that, we have a couple 15 amp outlets, nothing too crazy, just some all-weather outlets that will allow you to plug in some accessories here if you're enjoying this space at your campsite. So here at the rear of the unit, we have your 7-way cord. What this is going to do is, of course, connect your truck camper with your truck. This is going to give you full function to your tow vehicle's charging system, marker lights, tail lights, things like that. So in this scenario, this will either plug into your fifth wheel connection or your bumper connection. So make sure you have one of those installed. And then beside that, we have your propane cylinder. This is a 20-pound propane cylinder, same variant you're going to find on any gas grill. Open and close valve on the top in the traditional location. Now, when it does come to removing this for service, you're of course going to make sure it is in the off position. We're going to disconnect this pigtail by unscrewing it. And then we have a tension band here that wraps around the belly of the tank. We just as easy make sure that we release that. With everything disconnected, that tank is just going to go ahead and come right out. And then when we buckle her back in, of course, hook that tension band up, make sure that this does seat all the way, and that's going to keep things nice and secure there. Now, one thing to talk about here at the rear of the unit is going to be that electric jack system. Of course, you have jacks on all four corners that are going to aid you in loading and unloading the system. The reason why we're talking about this at the rear of the unit is because the orientation of the remote is from the rear. So we have our driver side front here, we have driver side rear, passenger side front, passenger side rear, or all up or down at the same time. Now, when you turn this on, or if you want to adjust those jacks, you push the two center buttons. Two center buttons are going to turn the remote on, and then the two top buttons are going to link everything up to the internal board. And then again, we can control the jacks in pairs, individually, or all at the same time. Now, also here at the rear, some standard kind of RV usual suspects. We have an assist handle here. Of course, in its extended position, if you lift up, you can fold it against the door or against the body. So whatever you prefer, there's not a right or a wrong. It's all about preference there. We have a porch light here. Switch is going to be on the actual fixture. So on the underside is going to be a toggle switch. And then if we go ahead and take a look in this compartment, we have your cassette toilet. We're going to talk about this, of course, more on the inside of the unit. But this is where all the magic happens, so to speak. So this is where you're going to be dumping the unit, servicing it, things like that. So a couple things that you have in here is going to be your water level. You're going to be able to sight that through this kind of glass looking tube, and you're going to fill that with this guy here. So what you're going to do is you'll remove the cap, of course, start putting water in here until you see this fill up. Now, when you've used the toilet and it's time to dump, you are going to go ahead and remove the cassette portion of that. There's a little lock tab here on the bottom. You're going to lift that up. That's going to unlock everything, and then this whole unit is going to come up. Now, you can either dump this at a dump station if that's available. Generally, they will charge to do so. But it is also, if where you're camping has bathrooms or something like that, you can physically go into the restroom, and they make this very easy to actually just go ahead and dump that down toilet. So what you have here is a little vacuum button, or it provides air to this holding tank, so it's not like glugging when you go to actually dump it, and they make kind of a dirty job as clean as possible. You're not like staring any of your waste kind of right at it or anything like that. But with that being said, to kind of return it back to service is very easy to do. Take your lid, make sure you screw that back on nice and tight. And then this, you might have seen me fumbling around with this. This is actually a funnel for filling that if you choose to use it. Very doable without, but it does actually store right there on the holding tank as well if you, again, choose to use that. And then all we have to do is go ahead and slide this back in. What's happening when we slide this back in is it's actually moving this blade valve out of the way and returning the unit back to service. And then when you pull it out, it kind of hides that again, so you're not looking your waste kind of right in the face. So there you go. Door can be locked. You do need to push both tabs to open it. So down below here we have your dump valve for your gray water. This is going to be sink water, shower water, of course, just about everything other than the toilet. And you have a couple options on how you actually make your connection to this to get it ready to dump. Now, this is relatively clean water, of course, not any sewage or anything like that. So they use a traditional bayonet fitting. You're going to find this just about on any camper. Very easy to make that connection. It is going to connect the very same way this cap does. So you'll have two keyholes here on either side, 4 prongs along the outside. Just put it in a halfway position. Give it a quarter turn. That's going to go ahead and lock it on. And whether you're, again, locking in your sewage hose or locking the cap on, it's going to work just the same. And then if you would rather kind of just like route your water away from your campsite or catch it in a different kind of sort of receptacle, you do have a standard hose connection here. So you can choose to use a, of course, not your freshwater drinking hose, but any old hose will work to, again, route that water away from your campsite or catch it in a receptacle, something along that. When it does come to actually dump or purge that water, you are just going to be taking your blade X valve here and pulling it 6 inches towards the right. So what we see here is in the closed position. To open it is it's just going to be a 6-inch pull there to the right. So here, right inside the unit, we're going to, of course, find our restroom, our wet bath area. What we can see first up is going to be kind of the business end of that Thetford cassette toilet. Very easy to, of course, see what you have here, but you have a blue button here that's going to feed water to the commode, and then your flush button here. So nothing too crazy there, very easy to use, very easy to clean, very usable. We also have your shower head here, which is going to be kind of your standard RV style shower head. You will have a on-off button here on the actual fixture, as well as your standard kind of mixing valves that you have down here for hot and cold. The idea being is that once you have your desired mixture here at the valve, you can go ahead and turn this off momentarily. What you're going to find yourself doing is like a military Navy style shower. Soap up, turn the water off, rinse off, turn the water off, things like that. So this is just a workaround to help you conserve water. So keep that in mind. And then one cool thing I like is that you have on the floor of the shower this piece of HDPE or whatever they're making this out of. What this does is if you just like take a shower or something and the shower floor is wet, you can go ahead and put this in. That way you're not standing on the wet floor. What we have right here inside the door is going to be a very important piece of safety equipment. Of course, you all know that this is a fire extinguisher. Very important that we do not only test the fire extinguisher every single time we take the unit out, but we are going to want to make sure we test all of our safety equipment, which is going to include our smoke alarm, carbon monoxide LP leak detector, and yes, our fire extinguisher. So what you do to test this is you have a little test button here on the top of it, this little green tab. If you push that down and it springs back, that means you still have life within the unit. It is ready to use. If it does anything else other than spring back, then that means it's time to pull out and replace. Moving on here into the kitchen area, of course, you have all of this cabinetry and storage space. These are all going to have lock buttons on them, so you do need to push in the center of it. That will allow you to go ahead and open and close the drawers. Here we have our furnace blower motor or vent. All of the heat from the unit is going to come from this location. It does have a little kind of louver thing here that you can rotate to kind of directionalize that air. Although it is a kind of fleeting practice because this is going to kind of push air wherever it wants to. Although, again, all of your heat is going to come from this location. It is sized accordingly to this unit. You're going to have no problems controlling temperature using this 12-volt propane burning furnace. Moving on into the kitchen area further, we have a couple more 15-amp outlets there. And then you have a couple more down here as well. So a ton of outlets in such a small space. We have our propane cooktop here. Does have a built-in sparker or igniter. So the idea being is you're going to turn your knob here. Once you've done so, you can go ahead and start igniting on either one of those burners there, and we can see that flame. One thing to keep in mind is that if you've just cooked a meal on this, make sure you give it ample time to go ahead and cool down before shutting the lid. When you do go to shut the lid, it does have a lock mechanism on it. So what you're going to want to do is lift from the center. That's going to allow that to come down and shut properly. Also, one thing that I do really like about these Northstars is going to be this kind of Thedford built-in drying rack and storage thing for your dishes. So it all fits there into the sink. But we do have a couple other kind of options. We have a cutting board that we can use that again is going to store in that location. You have like a basket for dishes. You have a little utensil kind of holder or dryer, or whatever you want to use it for. You can, but it is all kind of self-contained into this tub that then stores in the sink itself. So just kind of a really cool thought, and I do like, again, how modular the whole setup is. So if we go ahead and put everything back, we can close that lid without issue. On the fixture, of course, you have different spray modes. You do have the pull out. This is very kind of indicative of what you would see in the residential sector, but it does work well with this sink, and it being your only sink in the unit. It is a very, very practical way to set that up. So what we have here is going to be your thermostat for that furnace. Very easy to use. You have a on-off switch here, so we're going to turn that to heat. And then if we look here at the actual display, the smaller number is going to be our set temperature. That's what we're going to adjust here with these arrows. And then the larger number is going to be our real-time temperature within the unit. Again, very easy to use. Now, once we turn this on, that blower motor kicks on immediately. 16 seconds after that, it actually ignites. By that 30-second mark, it will start to go ahead and produce heat. Any unit of this size within that first 15 minutes of operation, if it does set off your smoke alarm, it's nothing to be worried about. It is well within the manufacturer's specs for that to happen. Of course, they develop dust, things like that they are burning off within, again, that first 15 minutes of operation. Moving on here, we have our refrigerator. Now, this is a three-way refrigerator. What that means for you is it will run not only on 110-volt electricity, it will run on propane gas, and it will run on 12 volt. If we go ahead and push the on-off button here on the far left, it will turn on. It will kind of go through a boot up mode. It will default to the last save setting. For us, that's going to be AC voltage. If we want to change, we just push the corresponding source. And then here we have our temperature control. The more bars you see, the cooler the unit will be. And then if we encounter any, issues, like say AC voltage becomes interrupted, it will start flashing this exclamation point just like that. And then for us to kind of reset it, we need to push that. Of course, if we do not correct the issue, it will keep alerting to us. So go ahead, in this case, plug the unit in, the camper in, I should say, and then push that, and it will stop beeping at you, or choose a different source. So we would still get that same kind of fault if we didn't light here on propane. It would do the same thing. If we go ahead and open the door, nothing too crazy in here. We do have the kind of fancy schmancy blue lights, but we also have a fold down ice box, which is very usable. And if we are doing any storage of the unit, we can go ahead and flip this out. What that's going to do is that's going to keep the doors from closing completely, keep the inside from getting any mildew or a stinky smell to it, again, while you are storing the unit. Up top here, we have the flip top here, going to be your mirror within the unit. That way you're not walking around all crazy, because this is, again, going to be the only mirror within the unit on that flip top. Moving within the unit further, we have your charging center here. This is going to be a 12-volt cigarette lighter style receptacle for any kind of car charger setups or 12-volt appliance. And then we have two USB chargers there as well for any USB driven devices, phones, things like that. And then below that we have your solar charge controller. What that's going to do is give you a real-time readout of the energy you are intaking via solar, or where your battery is sitting in terms of voltage. This is essentially going to be the brains behind the solar system. So it's going to take in energy as needed, and of course not when it's not. So very easy to use. It does just kind of run in the background, so there's really not too terribly much you have to do with that. And then below that we have your converter, fuse panel, breaker box there. We're going to see here we have our 110 volt appliances. They're going to be on your standard resettable residential breaker there. And then over here we have our 12 volt appliances. They're going to utilize a replaceable blade style automotive fuse. You're going to be able to source those from any auto store. It's going to also be my recommendation that you do keep a variety pack of fuses with the unit in case they do burn out on you when you are out camping. And then beside that we have our water pump switch. So no indicator other than just the writing on the switch to let you know that that water pump is on or off. And we're going to use that water pump when we are using our freshwater connection to draw that water up from the tank to the fixtures to make that water usable. And then below that we have the on-off switch for our water heater. Now what you're going to see there is you see of course the on-off switch, what you're going to find standard, but you also have a red indicator light there. Now what that light does is really that's our indicator on whether or not the unit has lit. So it may come on red when you flip on that switch, and you may see that kind of come on and off while it's going through that lighting cycle. But ultimately what you're going to find is that if you come back 5 minutes later and that light is on, then your water heater did not light. What that means is generally you're either out of propane gas, unlikely in a unit of this size, but maybe that propane hasn't made its way through the line to the appliance, or maybe your tank valve is just off. In the event, kind of go outside, investigate, make sure you have propane gas in the bottle, make sure that it's open, turn that switch off, turn it back on. It will recycle and generally will light on the first try of the second cycle if it didn't light initially. And then below that we have your battery disconnect switch. What you're going to use that for is anytime you're storing the unit for long periods of time, we're going to want to go ahead and disconnect the unit. Of course, you've seen all the lights go out because we do not have the unit plugged into 110 volt electricity. What we do when we turn that to the off position is we are isolating the battery or disconnecting the battery, as the name implies. So again, designed for periods of long-term storage. What that's going to do is allow you to keep those batteries in close to the same level as they were when you entered the unit into storage. So here's your lagoon table. Other than being an excellent option for a multi-positionable table, this is also going to make a secondary sleeping area within the camper. So what you have here is handles. You have 3 of them. You're going to use those to either tension this down to keep it from moving going down the road, or you're going to use those to disassemble. Starting with, I guess, this one here to remove the tabletop from the actual arm bracket there. These are kind of the only thing I can really compare these handles to is almost like ratchets. So in an instance like this where I turn to loosen it, but my pull is interrupted, of course, by the tabletop, I can pull out. That's going to release the gearing, and once I let it go and it settles back in, it gives you a full fresh pull. So once that's loosened up, you can kind of wiggle that tabletop out of the way, and with that separated, we can then do the same for this guy here. And then lastly, we're going to do the same for the floor arm, but we're going to have to again pull that handle out and reset it back to actually get that loose. Now you can go ahead and reassemble this, and it does have a little rail there that you can slide that on and kind of store everything self-contained or whatnot. What you do then is you take your tabletop, put it there in that space, and what you're going to use is these cushions. You have an extra cushion up top here. You're going to go ahead and use that to fill in this space, again, for a secondary sleeping area. So nothing too crazy with that. And then returning it back to service is very easy to do. We're gonna momentarily get this stuff kind of out of the way. We slide our arm on the track here. And we're gonna make sure that we want to tighten that up nice and tight so it will support the weight of that tabletop. We then take our secondary arm and just make sure that you can read the label. That's how you'll know you're assembling it correctly. And then lastly, we put our tabletop in and again, tighten it down. Now, going down the road, you'll want to kind of bear down on all of these pivot points. That way this table's not moving around all willy-nilly going down the road. A couple things left to talk about. We have your air conditioner up top here. From a maintenance standpoint, you have removable filters on each side. You have some thumb tabs here. Just go ahead and put some pressure on them. Move this grating out of the way. You're going to find your netted filter. You have one on each side. Go ahead and remove those filters. They are washable. Rinse them off in the sink. Make sure they dry completely. Go ahead and insert them back the same way you took them out and you'll be good to go. We have our options here. We have a low fan, a high fan, and then a low cool and a high cool. So we have a couple different modes, a couple fan only modes, and then a couple actual air conditioned modes. And then we have our thermostat here, which is going to be our kind of temperature setting within our setting here. Also up here on the ceiling, we have our smoke alarm there. Again, very important part of safety equipment there. Runs on a 9-volt battery. Go ahead and keep a spare 9-volt battery with the unit in the event that you would need to change that when you are on the road. So here we are. We're going to make sure that we open up the rooftop lid and run the fan in reverse. What that's going to do is as you lower the lift system, it is going to draw in that excess fabric to help you to make sure that nothing gets pinched. We're going to go ahead and lower that lift system. Generally, it's a good idea to stop 3/4 of the way. That way you can go ahead and tuck any fabric that may be sticking out. Lastly, we're going to go around the outside. You will have 3 latches on each side of the camper. We're going to make sure that we do go ahead and latch those down securely. We do hope you enjoyed the walkthrough. If you have any questions or concerns, don't hesitate to give us a call. Thank you so much for your time. Just happy to be here, doing a walkthrough. Here we see the 12, okay, getting closer, getting warmer, getting there, yeah. Here's dang old dang table, dang old table. Table man, multi-positional. Move around, dang line table. It's okay.